Victoria raised her glass of champagne and clinked it against John's with a smirk. "To real wealth," she said loudly, glancing at me like I was the roach under her heel. "Not whatever. Pretend life some people are living." Everyone laughed. I was holding a tray, literally. White gloves, black vest, name tag, Terrence. They didn't even recognize me. It had been 3 years since college, 3 years since she tossed me out of her life for not having enough money, enough ambition, enough shine, and now at her own engagement party she made me serve drinks. To the same man she left me for. I should have been angry. Instead I smiled, because I already knew something she didn't. The building this party was held in? Mine. The champagne? From my winery. And the man she was marrying, John? His company had just been acquired 2 hours ago. By me. But she hadn't found out yet. She still thought I was just some failed loser with debt and regret. Still thought she had won. Watching her toss her head back and brag about her ring, her dress, her future, it would have hurt once, not anymore. Then came the moment. John took a call, stepped aside, and froze mid-conversation. His face drained of color. He walked back to Victoria, whispering fast and low. She laughed at first, then blinked, then looked around. She saw me, saw the tray in my hands, and then saw the man behind me, my assistant, handing a folder to the hotel manager, the title across it, Carter Holdings Acquisition Notice. Her hand slipped, the champagne flute shattered on the floor. She looked at me again. This time her lips parted, but no words came. She swayed, tried to take a step back, and collapsed against the dessert table in her custom gown. She fainted. I crouched beside her, set down my tray, and whispered in her ear as chaos erupted around us. "You mocked me for being poor. But Victoria, I own your entire life now. Back in college, everyone said Victoria was out of my league. And maybe she was. Beautiful, sharp-tongued, always dressed like she'd stepped out of a fashion ad. She walked like she owned the hallway. And the hallway agreed. I was just Terrence, second-year business major. Wore clearance hoodies, took notes with a half-broken pen, and worked 2 part-time jobs just to keep my phone bill paid. But Victoria liked that I followed her around. She never said it directly, but she enjoyed it. Enjoyed the attention, the loyalty, the way I dropped everything to carry her bags or run to the cafe when she forgot lunch. She never once introduced me as her boyfriend. But I didn't mind. She smiled when I helped her with assignments, laughed when I got flustered around her perfume. And when she asked for favors, she always touched my shoulder lightly, like she knew I couldn't say no. We were never official. But I was the one she called when her heels broke at a party. The one she messaged when her tutor bailed. The one she invited to sit beside her when she didn't want to walk into the lecture hall alone, and that was enough. At least it was back then. She came from money, old money. Her father sat on the board of multiple multinational firms. Her mother ran a chain of luxury spas. Victoria's allowance was more than my dad's yearly salary. She lived in a condo overlooking the city skyline and drove a cherry-red convertible with a vanity plate that just said V. I lived in a shared apartment with 2 roommates who stole my food and left their dishes in the sink for weeks. I biked to class, showered at the gym when our water got cut off. And still, I tried to keep up with her world, tried to buy her a silver necklace once, cheap plating, nothing special. She never wore it, probably threw it away before she even left the cafe. But I didn't care. I thought that if I worked hard enough, stayed close enough, maybe one day she'd see me differently. That day never came. Instead, John did. He was everything I wasn't. Tall, confident, always in designer suits and expensive watches. His family ran an import-export conglomerate, and he'd been driving foreign cars since we were 18. Victoria took one look at him and laughed less around me, asked fewer questions, forgot to reply to my texts. Eventually, she stopped replying, altogether. Then one day she told me, "Terrence, I need a guy who can match me. You're sweet. But sweet doesn't build empires." It wasn't even cruel, it was worse. She said it like it was a fact. And then she left. Not for some stranger, but for John. A man I'd once offered my umbrella to when we got caught in the rain on campus. I even helped him carry his luggage when he moved into our dorm tower. He barely remembered my name. When they made their relationship public, I didn't eat for 2 days. When I saw them kissing outside the library, I threw up behind the economics building. When she blocked me on every app without a single explanation, I stood in the rain for hours outside her condo, hoping she'd at least come down and tell me to go away in person. She never did. That should have been the end. But it wasn't. Because, right after graduation, everything I had left fell apart in one brutal sweep. My dad's business, already hanging on by a thread, collapsed after a failed delivery deal. His partner vanished with the last of their capital. Dad tried to fight it, but the bank froze his accounts. One morning, I found him slumped over the dining table, unpaid bills scattered like a funeral offering. He never got up again. Mom broke down completely after that. She had always been the strong one, brought us up with coupons and hand-me-downs, taught me never to beg. But when Dad died, something inside her snapped. The hospital called it nervous exhaustion. I called it watching the strongest person I knew unravel thread by thread. Victoria heard about it, of course. Word spreads fast in elite circles. She sent flowers to the funeral. Nothing handwritten, just her name printed on a store-bought card. I never saw her again until years later. When her fiancé, John, was set to merge with a struggling manufacturing firm to boost his public image. And I was the CEO of the holding company about to buy that firm, under a different name. By then, I had stopped chasing dreams that weren't meant for me. I chased power instead, and caught it. The boy who once stood in the rain waiting for a girl's pity had become the man behind the curtain, pulling strings no one saw until it was too late. And Victoria, she was about to realize that the poor kid she mocked was now the man holding her entire life in the palm of his hand. It happened at a networking event hosted by Victoria's family. I wasn't invited, of course. I came as a waiter, jacket too tight, name tag crooked, smiling through clenched teeth, as I weaved through the sea of silk gowns and manicured entitlement. That was where I saw her again. Victoria, leaning into John's side, whispering into his ear, lips glossed and smirking. Her laugh hadn't changed. It still rose above every conversation like it demanded the room. But her eyes were colder, harder, no more pretending. She had climbed. High enough now that she didn't need masks. You see him? She said, pointing subtly at me. I had just set down a tray of champagne glasses. He used to follow me around campus like a puppy. Now he carries drinks for people like us. Poetic, isn't it? John chuckled, barely glancing my way. I thought he dropped out. No, she said. He just dropped off the radar. The words hit like a slap. And yet, I stayed still. I bowed slightly, as if I hadn't heard them at all. That was the game, wasn't it? Pretend you don't. Bleed when they cut you, but Stella had seen it. She worked the valet line that night, wore a plain black uniform with scuffed shoes and a clipboard she held like armor. Most guests ignored her. Victoria had once tripped her on purpose when we were in school, then laughed when Stella scraped her knees. That's what you get for breathing in the same air as people above your level, she'd said. But that night, Stella approached me while I was on break, slipping me a bottle of water and sitting beside me on the stone bench outside the ballroom. We didn't say much. She didn't ask what I was doing there, didn't offer pity or fake sympathy, just sat quietly and handed me her sandwich, split in half. I had a second life, I wanted to tell her. In another timeline, you changed everything, but I stayed silent. A week later, the buyout papers went through. John's company was acquired, silently, cleanly, no leaks to the press. Victoria didn't find out until the shareholders summoned John to an emergency meeting. By then, it was too late. Their wedding invitations had already gone out. That's when she showed up, at my new company headquarters, not dressed in her usual arrogance, but in confusion. Eyes wide, breathing fast, hands trembling. "What is this?" she demanded. "Are you trying to ruin me? Is this revenge?" I leaned back in the executive chair I never thought I'd own and said calmly, "You don't even know who I am anymore." "Oh, I know exactly who you are," she snapped. "You're the same boy who used to scrape together coins just to buy me coffee. You think money makes you different?" "No," I said. "But it reveals who you really are." She flinched. I saw, the way her throat tightened. "Why?" she asked, voice softer. "Why do all this? You could have just walked away." "I did," I said. "But you followed me into every nightmare. You were the voice I heard when my mother begged me for medicine. You were the face I saw when my father's business collapsed. You were the echo of every rejection, every humiliation. You made yourself unforgettable." Victoria didn't speak. Her hands shook as she gripped the edge of my desk. "Now," I said, "you're marrying a man who lost everything the second he shook my hand. You think that's a coincidence?" Her lips parted. "You're lying." I stood up, walked around the desk, stopped in front of her. "Look me in the eyes and tell me you still believe you're better than me." She couldn't. Instead, she turned to leave. But at the door, she paused. "You won't be happy," she said over her shoulder. "People like you, you never are. You climb, and when you get to the top, you realize there's nothing there." "I don't need the top," I said. "I just need peace. And making sure you're not standing in it is peace." She left. That night, I got a message. From Stella. "Hey, I heard what happened." Just that. No judgment, no curiosity, just awareness. I stared at the screen for a long time before replying. "I'm okay. Are you free for coffee this weekend?" It took her 4 minutes to reply. "Only if you let me pay this time." And that's when I realized, while Victoria and John were still busy playing castles in the sand, someone else had already been building something real beside me. After that meeting with Victoria, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, feeling everything and nothing all at once. The revenge had landed, flawless, silent, devastating. And yet I didn't feel triumphant. I felt empty. The image of her standing there in my office, no longer smirking but scared, had stuck with me like a bruise. I'd waited years for that moment, dreamed of it. Rehearsed what I'd say. But now that it had happened, all I could think about was how small she looked when she walked away. I got up in the middle of the night, drove without a destination. The city was quiet, only traffic lights blinking like they were thinking too. I ended up parked in front of the old university library. Stella's name was still at the back of my mind. It always was, somehow. She'd messaged again that evening. Just a simple, "You okay? You seemed off." I hadn't replied, because how could I explain that I'd spent half my life chasing someone who didn't care, and now when someone finally did care, I didn't know how to accept it. The next day, I went to the coffee shop early, sat by the window with a black Americano I didn't even like, waiting. Stella arrived on time. She always did. Wore the same pale gray hoodie she used to wear in college, sleeves stretched from years of nervous fidgeting. Her hair was tied back in a loose bun, no makeup, no filters. She smiled when she saw me, not wide or dramatic, just soft, steady. Real. We didn't talk about Victoria. Instead, she told me about her mom, who was recovering from surgery, about how she was trying to build an app for local shopkeepers, about how hard it was to find decent coders who didn't overpromise. And I listened. I didn't interrupt. Didn't look at my phone once. I just watched the way her fingers wrapped around her cup, the way her eyes lit up when she spoke about the tiniest wins, the way she remembered to ask about me, without expecting an answer. After an hour, she paused and said, "You look tired." "I haven't been sleeping." She nodded. Didn't push. Outside, rain started tapping against the windows. The city grew blurry. "Do you ever feel like you got everything you wanted?" I murmured. "But it doesn't feel the way it should?" She was quiet for a while, then said, That's usually because you didn't actually want it. You just wanted the pain to stop. That hit harder than anything Victoria had ever said in her life. I looked at Stella, really looked at her, and for the first time, I felt something shift. Not pity, not obligation. Peace. A few days later, Victoria sent me an invitation. A dinner, pretty smaller than her usual grand events. No photographers, no crowd, just her and John and a handful of close connections. I knew what it was. Bait. She wanted to prove she hadn't lost. So I accepted. I brought Stella. The moment we walked in, Victoria froze mid-sentence. Her eyes scanned Stella from head to toe, like she couldn't understand how someone like her could be standing beside someone like me. Stella didn't flinch, just smiled politely and nodded. "Thank you for having us." Victoria blinked, her voice strained. "You're welcome." John was already halfway through a bottle of wine, sloppy, irritated, clearly struggling to keep up appearances. I noticed how his hands trembled slightly when he poured his drink. Victoria noticed too. But she didn't say anything. She was too focused on Stella. The whole night was one long, polite war. Every word from Victoria was dipped in sugar but sharpened like glass. "Must be exhausting for Terrence," she said sweetly, "trying to lift someone else up all the time." "I wouldn't know," Stella replied. "He's never treated me like I needed lifting. We walked side by side." There was no malice in her tone, no smugness, just truth. And that's what made it unbearable for Victoria. Later that night, as Stella stepped away to take a phone call, Victoria approached me. Alone. "Are you really happy?" she asked. I didn't answer. She bit her lip. "You still think about me, don't you?" I looked her in the eyes, and for the first time since college, I felt nothing. No anger, no longing, just silence. "You were a chapter," I said. "But Stella, she's the whole story." Victoria didn't speak. She didn't need to. The pain in her eyes said everything. 2 weeks later, everything changed. It started with a knock at Stella's apartment door. I was there, helping her set up the new prototype she'd been designing. She looked up from her laptop, puzzled. I wasn't expecting anyone. When she opened the door, Victoria stood on the other side. She looked different. No makeup, no jewelry. Hair pulled back like she hadn't bothered to check the mirror. "Need to talk to Terrence," she said. "Not a request. A demand." Stella stepped aside without a word. Victoria walked in like she still owned the air in the room. "Your company," she said, "just blocked a land development deal my parents were finalizing. I already knew. My legal team had flagged the permit as suspicious. Dozens of backdoor bribes, displaced tenants, environmental violations. It would have been an ethical nightmare." I told her calmly, "We don't do business with corruption." "You think my family's corrupt?" she spat. "Your family signed off on illegal demolitions. What would you call that?" Victoria's hands balled into fists. "You're doing this to punish me." "I'm doing my job." "Bullshit," she snapped. "You could have let it pass, but you wanted to drag us down. You're just using ethics as a weapon." Stella sat quietly across the room, listening. Her face was unreadable. "I'm not your enemy, Terrence," Victoria said, her voice suddenly softer. "I made a mistake. I chose wrong, but You don't get to rewrite history," I said sharply. "You didn't just choose John. You humiliated me. You stepped on me to climb higher." She flinched. "And now you're doing the same." I didn't answer. She turned to Stella. "You think he won't do it to you? You think you're special? I knew him before he was anything. He loved me once." Stella didn't blink. "And you threw it away." Victoria stared at her, breathing fast. "This isn't over," she said finally, then stormed out, slamming the door. For a moment, there was silence. Then Stella said, "Is it true?" I looked at her. "Is what?" "True." "That she's right. That you're trying to ruin her family? I'm trying to stop bad business, I said. If it wasn't her, it'd be someone else. But it is her, Stella said quietly. Her eyes met mine, steady, unsure. I need to know where your lines are. I'm not the guy I used to be. I know, she said. I just hope you still remember who you are. That night when she kissed me goodnight, it felt different, like something had cracked, and we were both pretending we didn't hear it. I thought I could compartmentalize everything, that I could separate what Victoria's family had done from the girl she used to be, that I could build something real with Stella without letting my past bleed into it. But life doesn't work like that. You don't get to cut yourself cleanly in half. It all came to a head during a citywide investor summit. I was on the main panel, seated between two venture capitalists and the regional bank director. Stella had come as my guest, still reluctant, still modest. She wore a slate blue dress I'd bought her, though she insisted she'd return it after the event. I'm just here for the data, she whispered with a smile. And then Victoria walked in, not alone, with her father, Mr. Langston, the man who once called me background noise. They weren't on the guest list. I found out why seconds later. The organizers announced a surprise presentation. The Langston Group's Reclaim Project, an innovative, high-yield redevelopment model in partnership with regional contractors. My stomach dropped. The Reclaim Project was the same slum clearance deal we had blocked weeks ago, the same one flagged for illegal displacement, but now they'd repackaged it. Given it a new name, new colors, and, somehow, new permits. As Victoria stood on stage beaming at the crowd, her father outlined the project like it was a humanitarian mission. We're restoring dignity, he said, while boosting local employment. I checked my phone under the table. 3 new notifications. Stella's prototype lab? Demolished. Local families evicted overnight. Our legal injunction lifted by an emergency court override. It wasn't just a stunt. It was war, and she had fired the first shot. I stood up quietly and left the panel mid-session. Stella followed. We walked into a side hallway, silent at first. I'm so sorry, she said, voice trembling. I didn't know they'd target the lab. It's not even worth anything yet. They're not targeting the lab, I said. They're targeting you, me, everything we've tried to build. She looked up at me, eyes wide. What are we going to do? I had no answer. The old me, the one who lived in the shadows of power, would have folded, would have begged. But I wasn't him anymore. And I wasn't going to watch Stella's work be erased just to settle someone else's grudge. I went straight to the board, called an emergency vote. It wasn't easy. Half of my investors had personal ties to the Langston family. A few warned me to back off, to be reasonable, to avoid turning the company into a battlefield. I stood at the head of the room and said, anyone who wants to protect their golf buddies, leave now. I don't want a single dollar from anyone who chooses comfort over conscience. 3 members walked out. 5 stayed. That was all I needed. We sued for federal-level investigation, citing fraudulent zoning approvals. We released every internal document our team had gathered on Langston's illegal acquisitions. We bought ad space to raise public awareness. We hosted interviews with evicted tenants. Within 72 hours, the entire city knew the truth, and Victoria's face was on every news channel, not in soft lighting, not filtered, but raw, confronted, cornered. She went into hiding, but the damage didn't stop there. Her father's assets were frozen. The Reclaim project was declared null and void, and Stella's lab, though destroyed, was awarded damages triple its value. I thought that would be the end, but it wasn't. Because when I got home that night, Stella wasn't there. Just a note on the kitchen counter. It read, "You didn't become the monster. But I saw how easy it could have been for you. I know you did what was right. I just need time to catch up, to breathe, to make sure I love the man you are now, not just the one I met before this war started." S. I read it 5 times. Then, sat down at the table and stared at the walls like they might answer the ache in my chest. The irony was brutal. I'd won, completely, publicly, and I had no one to share it with. Victoria tried calling 3 times that week. I didn't answer. She sent a long email, then a voice memo, then an apology handwritten in perfect cursive on the back of an old cafe napkin, one I remembered from college. But none of it mattered. What hurt wasn't that she'd betrayed me again. What hurt was that I'd let her matter enough to make Stella leave. I found myself outside Stella's apartment at 2 a.m. on a Thursday. Lights off, her car gone. I waited 3 hours, she didn't come home. So I left a letter taped to her door. I wrote, "I didn't fight to win. I fought because you made me want to be someone worth standing beside. I know I messed up, not by doing the right thing, but by not showing you why I was doing it. I'm not asking you to come back. I'm asking you to believe that I only ever fought because you gave me something worth protecting." I left, didn't call, didn't push, didn't try to chase her through another storm. This time, I waited, and for the first time in my life, I prayed she'd come back, not because she missed me, but because she believed in me. A month passed. Didn't hear from Stella. Not a text, not a call, not a single reply to the letter I'd left on her door. The silence wasn't cruel. It was careful. Like she needed space to sort through the aftermath of everything I'd burned down, and I gave it to her. But that didn't mean I sat still. While the Langston family scrambled to recover from the public fallout, I doubled down. Their shady suppliers were blacklisted. Their political backers quietly withdrew. One of their shell companies was exposed for laundering cash through foreign real estate. Victoria's father was summoned to court. He walked in with 2 lawyers, a crumpled suit, and none of the usual arrogance. He didn't even glance at the cameras. Victoria did. She stood beside him as if her posture alone could hold up their empire. But this time, no designer heels could save her. When the judge read the charges, her mouth parted slightly, just enough for the cameras to catch her lips trembling. I watched the broadcast from my office, expression unreadable. My assistant asked if I wanted champagne. I said no. That wasn't what victory looked like. Victory came 3 days later. I got a text, unknown number. It said, "Are you home?" Before I could even type a reply, there was a knock at the door. I opened it. Stella stood there. No suitcase, no drama. Just her and the quiet weight of everything we'd both been holding in. "I'm not great at speeches," she said. "I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. I kept thinking," she went on, "about who you were, who you are, and who you're trying to become." I swallowed hard. "And?" She looked up at me and smiled. The truth is, I liked all 3. The next second, I was pulling her into my arms. She didn't resist, didn't pull away, just rested her head against my chest and let out the breath she'd been holding for weeks. We didn't say "I love you," not yet. We didn't need to. We just stood there, whole again. And for the first time, the silence felt full instead of hollow. That same week, I made one final move, not out of anger, out of closure. My legal team tracked down the wedding venue where Victoria and John had once planned their lavish ceremony. The contract had been canceled after the fallout, but the deposit remained. I bought the venue, then booked it under a new name. 1 month later, invitations went out. Not for a wedding, but a gala. A scholarship fundraiser under Stella's name. Backed by my company with investors, press, and guests from every corner of the city, Victoria got an invite. She showed up. Of course she did. She wore black, not her usual red. Hair neat, expression cold. She saw Stella on stage giving her speech. Heard her announce the tech incubator we'd built in honor of the evicted tenants. Watched as we unveiled the foundation's first set of grant recipients, students who couldn't afford college now, fully funded. When the lights dimmed for the dinner portion, Victoria approached our table. "Can we talk?" she asked. I stood, straightened my jacket, and walked with her to the side hallway. She didn't even try to fake warmth. "You planned this for me," she said. "Didn't you?" "No," I said. "I planned this for them." I nodded toward the students. "For people who didn't have the chance you wasted," she scoffed. "Do you think this makes you noble?" "No," I said quietly. "It just makes me free." She looked at me like she didn't recognize who I was anymore. And maybe that was the point. "I used to matter to you," she said. "You did," I said. "And that's why this isn't revenge. It's justice. There's a difference." "Do you feel better now?" she whispered. I met her eyes. "I feel whole." She didn't reply, didn't cry, didn't beg. She just nodded once and walked away. That was the last time I saw her. The Langston name never recovered. Their family assets were seized, their stocks delisted, their penthouse sold at auction to cover legal fees. John moved abroad quietly, trying to escape the stain. Victoria's last public appearance was a failed media interview that cut mid-broadcast when she snapped at the host. Meanwhile, Stella and I built something permanent. Not a fairy tale, not perfection. Just real, solid, earned happiness. She never let me slack. I never let her burn out. We fought sometimes, but we listened more. And one evening, while watching a storm through our apartment windows, she turned to me and asked, "Do you think your life would have been different if she'd stayed?" I thought about it, then shook my head. "No," I said, "because I never would have become the man you could love." She smiled. "Good," she said, "because I'm never letting you go." We didn't need champagne or headlines or applause. We had everything that mattered, a future built from the ruins of a lie. And for once, we didn't just survive the story, we rewrote it.